Hello everyone, test and discussion session today evening. So those of you who do not have the DBA apps can scan the QR code from here and download the app on iOS as well as the Android platform. So let's begin. The very first question. So which condition typically shows prolonged prothrombin time which is not corrected by parenteral vitamin K administration? So now tell me, how many of you can really answer that correctly? Increased PT, prothrombin time is prolonged. And if you give vitamin K, the PT still remains prolonged. It is not corrected by your parenteral vitamin K administration. So biliary obstruction, no. Cholestasis of pregnancy, no. The Dubin-Johnson syndrome, that is the any condition of obstructed, the conjugated hyperbilirubinemia, that is Dubin-Johnson and Roters, or pancreatic carcinoma. So all these conditions will cause what? They all are obstructive conditions, that is post-hepatic jaundice. So all of them will cause rise in conjugated bilirubin. So none of them will cause a prolonged PT that cannot be corrected by vitamin K. The only condition is severe hepatocellular failure. So this is the only condition where, because of the liver cell failure, the coagulation, the factors which are involved in the coagulation will not be synthesized. And as a result, even if you administer vitamin K, because the liver cells are themselves not functioning, there will be no synthesis of the coagulation factors. So that is the correct answer. So we have the correct answer here, severe hepatocellular failure. Now, severe hepatocellular failure can occur because of massive loss of the functional hepatocytes. And when can that happen? In conditions with fulminant hepatic failure, advanced cirrhosis. The liver is the primary site for the synthesis of the coagulation factors or the clotting factors 7, 9, and 10. 2, 7, 9, and 10. Plus protein C and S. So in hepatocellular failure, synthesis of these clotting factors is impaired because of the loss of liver cells or the hepatocyte function. Vitamin K requires functioning hepatocytes for the gamma carboxylation of the clotting factors. So if the hepatocytes are destroyed, this gamma carboxylation does not happen. So the clotting factors are ineffective. And that results in prolongation of the prothrombin time. And this prolongation does not get corrected or does not respond to your parenteral vitamin K administration. Now, this feature will help us in differentiating hepatic from the post-hepatic condition. So that is differentiating hepatocellular failure from the obstructive cholestasis, where if you administer vitamin K, the prothrombin time is corrected. Persistent prolongation of PT is also a marker of poor prognosis of the acute liver failure. It is often accompanied by low albumin and high bilirubin with a bilirubin encephalopathy. Clinically important in deciding liver transplantation candidacy. So, if the liver is completely in a very bad condition, this helps us, the MELD score and the King's College criteria, they are used to find out the liver transplantation candidacy, whether this patient is eligible for the liver transplant or not. So failure of prothrombin time correction with vitamin K is a marker of irreversible hepatocellular dysfunction. Correct? Just let us quickly have a look at the other options and why they are not the answer. So conditions like biliary obstruction. So because of the extrahepatic cholestasis or the biliary obstruction, the bile flow itself is impaired. So because bile flow is not available in the intestine, the fat-soluble vitamins, that is ADEK are the fat-soluble vitamins, and vitamin B and C are the water-soluble vitamins. So these fat-soluble vitamins are not absorbed because the bile is not available in the intestine because of the post-hepatic cholestasis. And that causes vitamin K deficiency in the system. And this vitamin K deficiency is causing impaired clotting factor carboxylation. As a result, if you administer the vitamin K parenterally, that is bypassing the intestine, you will correct the prothrombin time defect. Thus, prolonged PT because of biliary obstruction is reversible with vitamin K administration parenterally. Now, prothrombin time correction after vitamin K, this will differentiate cholestasis from the hepatocellular failure. So it is seen in obstructive jaundice, for example, the gallstones or the CA, pancreas, head of the pancreas. Another condition, that is cholestasis of pregnancy, almost the same condition, any cholestasis. So it is present in the second or the third trimester, and cholestasis and hyperbilirubinemia, which is a conjugated variety, will cause pruritus and mild jaundice. So it is related to the hormonal and the genetic predisposition leading to impaired bile secretion. So vitamin K absorption is again reduced because of the unavailability of bile. That will cause coagulopathy. We're not very severe, of course, but coagulopathy, that is prolongation of PT, will be there. So PT is usually normal because the condition is not very, very severe. But if it is prolonged, that gets corrected with vitamin K. So the condition resolves after delivery because it is based on hormones. And once the placenta is delivered, the baby is delivered, this hormonal changes, they revert back and the condition resolves. So it is not associated with irreversible hepatocellular dysfunction. Dubin-Johnson syndrome, another condition of conjugated bilirubinemia. So it's a benign inherited disorder with defective canalicular excretion of conjugated bilirubin. So that leads to mild conjugated hyperbilirubinemia, which is often asymptomatic. The liver is pigmented. So if you have on biopsy a black liver, the liver is pigmented, black gross appearance because of melanin-like pigment. So the coagulation profile remains normal since hepatocyte function is preserved. So prothrombin time is not prolonged. So there is, because it is PT is anyways normal, so vitamin K defect is not there. So it is not needed for the correction. Now pancreatic carcinoma, another condition of extrahepatic biliary obstruction because of compression of the common bile duct. That leads to conjugated hyperbilirubinemia. Again, another condition of conjugated hyperbilirubinemia. So the bilirubin, so the bile is not reaching the intestines. So that will cause what? Pale stools and dark urine. So we will come to that again. So vitamin K deficiency occurs because of fat malabsorption. So that is fat soluble vitamins are not absorbed. So prothrombin is prolonged. And if it is prolongation is present, that will correct with vitamin K. So failure to correct the prothrombin time suggests concomitant hepatocellular dysfunction and not isolated carcinoma. So if this PT does not get corrected, then we are dealing with hepatocellular dysfunction. So what is Courvoisier's law? Courvoisier's law is palpable non-tender gallbladder that is seen in malignant obstructions of CA pancreas. So head of the pancreas, we know that it is, the pancreas is lying in the C of the duodenum. So the head of the pancreas, if it is blocking the entry point of the bile duct, that is the common bile duct and the pancreatic duct, common pancreatic duct, they both open here. So if this head of the pancreas, malignancy of the head of the pancreas is blocking this ostium, which is leading the pancreatic duct and bile duct into the duodenum, then there is no bile that is released into the system, and that causes palpable non-tender gallbladder enlargement, and that causes Courvoisier's law. So what is the LMRP? LMRPs are the USP of DBA. So what is the LMRP for this question? That prolonged PT, which is not corrected by vitamin K, is seen in severe hepatocellular failure. If it is corrected by vitamin K, we are dealing with biliary obstruction, right? We move to the next question. Now here it is saying in unconjugated hyperbilirubinemia, which feature is most consistent? So what happens in unconjugated hyperbilirubinemia? So bilirubinuria is present. Is it present? No. Dark colored urine. So if there is no bilirubin present, urine will be normal in color. No bilirubin is secreted in the urine. So that is the consistent feature of unconjugated hyperbilirubinemia. Because we just learned in our last class that unconjugated bilirubin is insoluble, and because it is insoluble, it remains bound to albumin. So if it is bound to albumin, it is not filtered by the glomeruli. So pale stools, no, pale stools are a feature of post-hepatic obstruction. Because of the obstruction, you find that there is no bile that is secreted and reaching the intestines. Then high direct bilirubin. Again, we are talking of unconjugated hyperbilirubinemia, and we know that unconjugated bilirubin is the indirect bilirubin. And what is the meaning of this direct and indirect? We are labeling them direct and indirect on the basis of Vandenberg reaction. Okay. So the correct answer is no urinary bilirubin detected. That is the consistent feature of unconjugated hyperbilirubinemia. So unconjugated bilirubin, it is water insoluble and remains tightly bound to albumin in the circulation. And because of this albumin binding, it cannot pass through the glomeruli. Hence, bilirubinuria is never present in isolated unconjugated hyperbilirubinemia. Common causes will include like hemolysis, ineffective erythropoiesis, unconjugated hyperbilirubinemia. Congenital conditions are Gilbert's and Crigler-Najjar. Now, despite the high serum bilirubin, urine remains normal in color. Jaundice becomes clinically visible when we have already studied last time in the sclera when the unconjugated bilirubin is more than 3 milligram per deciliter. So the lab evaluation shows indirect or unconjugated predominance without bilirubinuria. This feature differentiates the unconjugated jaundice from the conjugated jaundice. So when it is conjugated jaundice, the conjugated bilirubin is soluble and is filtered by the glomeruli. So it is present in the urine, that is bilirubinuria is always present. So the presence or absence of bilirubinuria is the key diagnostic clue towards conjugated and the unconjugated. The most consistent feature will be no urinary bilirubin detected. What are the other options? Let's have a look why they are not the answer. So bilirubinuria present. We have just read bilirubinuria will only be present if it is conjugated, which is water soluble. So conjugated bilirubin can pass through the glomeruli and be excreted. Hence, bilirubinuria is a hallmark of conjugated hyperbilirubinemia. It never occurs in pure unconjugated jaundice. So presence of bilirubinuria will rule out hemolytic jaundice or unconjugated jaundice. Examples like viral hepatitis, obstructive jaundice, these are the conditions where there will be presence of conjugated bilirubin. Now the dark colored urine, again this is seen in conjugated hyperbilirubinemia because conjugated hyperbilirubinemia will be excreted in the urine causing bilirubinuria. So the urine appears cola colored or tea colored. In unconjugated hyperbilirubinemia, the urine color remains normal. Dark urine therefore indicates conjugated and not unconjugated jaundice and is seen in typically cholestasis, malignancy or hepatitis. Now, why not pale stools? Pale stools are caused by absence of stercobilinogen in the stools. This we studied in the bilirubin metabolism in our first class. So the bilirubin, conjugated bilirubin reaching the intestine is converted into stercobilinogen, and this stercobilinogen is responsible for the brown color of the stools. So if the stercobilinogen is absent, the stools will be pale in color. So if pale stool is a marker of obstructed bile flow. So that is very interesting. Pale stool plus dark urine, both are seen in conjugated hyperbilirubinemia. So the color from the stool decreases and the color of the urine increases. So this is a feature of conjugated hyperbilirubinemia with extrahepatic obstruction. In unconjugated jaundice, the bile flow remains intact. So the stools remain normal in color. So stools are also normal in color and the urine is also normal in color in case of unconjugated jaundice. Hence, pale stools are not seen in isolated unconjugated hyperbilirubinemia. Typical in choledocholithesis or the CA head of the pancreas, that is obstructive conditions. Now, high direct bilirubin. Again, we are dealing with unconjugated hyperbilirubinemia. So, unconjugated hyperbilirubinemia is the indirect bilirubin. Direct bilirubin remains normal or minimally elevated. High direct bilirubin suggests cholestasis or hepatocellular disease, which is seen in congenital conditions like Dubin-Johnson and Roters. What did I tell you? The doctors are always conjugated. So, and other conditions of obstructive jaundice, it is not a feature of unconjugated state. So, what is the LMRP? Your last minute revision point or the take home message is unconjugated bilirubin is bound to albumin. It is insoluble in water, not filtered at the glomeruli, so not excreted in the urine. So no bilirubinuria and the urine color remains normal. Right, so let's move to the next question. Now we are coming to the congenital conditions of hyperbilirubinemia. So we have a neonate presenting with a serum bilirubin of more than 20 milligram per deciliter. And the neonate develops kernicterus. Which genetic disorder is most likely? We studied last time in our last class the congenital conditions of hyperbilirubinemia, congenital conditions divided into direct and indirect. Direct is the doctor, the Dubin-Johnson and Roters, and that conjugated bilirubin will not cross the blood-brain barrier. Then the indirect or the unconjugated are Crigler-Najjar and the Gilberts. Out of these, Crigler-Najjar 1 is a condition of complete absence of the enzyme UDPT. As a result, uridine diphosphate glucuronil transferase UDGPT. Uridine diphosphate glucuronil transferase. Okay. So that is completely absent in type 1. So these neonates will have very high serum bilirubin levels and will develop kernicterus, and they are not compatible with life and they might expire in the very first year of life. That is Crigler-Najjar. So the answer is Crigler-Najjar type 1. So the answer is Crigler-Najjar type 1. Crigler-Najjar type 1, rare autosomal recessive disorder caused by complete absence of UDP-GT. That is uridine diphosphate glucuronil transferase activity. This enzyme normally conjugates the bilirubin in the hepatocytes, making it water soluble for excretion. In its absence, unconjugated bilirubin accumulates to dangerously high levels. So it is very, very high, more than 20 milligram per dl. Now, unconjugated bilirubin is neurotoxic because it crosses the immature neonatal blood-brain barrier. This leads to kernicterus. Kernicterus is what? Bilirubin encephalopathy. This will present with lethargy, hypotonia, seizures, and death. Now, unlike the Gilbert's or the type 2 Crigler-Najjar levels, the bilirubin levels are very, very high, more than 20 milligram per dl, and will remain high. So, kernicterus typically presents or develops in infancy and is fatal if untreated, leading to death in early childhood. Phototherapy converts the bilirubin, the unconjugated bilirubin to lumirubin. And as a result, phototherapy can temporarily lower the bilirubin by converting into soluble isomers, which is only partially effective. Definitive therapy is liver transplant, as the enzyme activity cannot be induced. Thus, neonatal jaundice with kernicterus strongly indicates Crigler-Najjar type 1. Other topics, other points which are not the answer and why they are not the answer, like Gilbert syndrome. As we just discussed, it is caused by partial deficiency of the UDP-GT activity, that is 30% of normal. So the 70% is still normal. It results in mild unconjugated hyperbilirubinemia and causes less than 6 milligram per dl rise in unconjugated bilirubin. Often asymptomatic, discovered during stress or fasting or illnesses, does not cause kernicterus or severe jaundice. Male are more commonly affected. The male children are more commonly affected to the ratio of 2:7:1. It's a benign condition and we do not require much treatment. Only thing is we avoid stress and fasting. Dubin-Johnson, it's a condition of conjugated hyperbilirubinemia, another autosomal recessive condition due to defect in the canalicular excretion of the conjugated bilirubin. So conjugated hyperbilirubinemia, patients are asymptomatic, mild jaundice. The typical picture is that on biopsy, the liver will be dark black in color. So prothrombin time, albumin, bilirubin, everything remains otherwise normal. It will not cause kernicterus. Rotor syndrome, another condition of conjugated hyperbilirubinemia. So similar to Dubin-Johnson, but without liver pigmentation. The difference between Dubin-Johnson and Roters is that there is no black pigmentation of the liver. So there is storage defect and excretion of conjugated bilirubin leads to mild conjugated hyperbilirubinemia. So clinically, it's a benign condition and asymptomatic. It will present with intermittent jaundice, does not present in neonate with kernicterus. Normal life expectancy, no treatment needed. Another condition, that is G6PD deficiency. It is X-linked recessive disorder causing hemolytic anemia. We know G6PD is X-linked recessive. So hemolysis leads to unconjugated hyperbilirubinemia. So the neonates may develop jaundice, but the bilirubin levels rarely reach more than 20 unless there is severe hemolysis. So it is X-linked recessive. So male children are more commonly affected. Kernicterus is possible, but less common. Associated with oxidative stress like fava beans or drugs or some infections. It is managed by avoiding the triggers and the supportive therapy.
So ma'am, sorry to interrupt. Meeting will be end within 5 minutes.
Cause complete absence of the enzyme UDP-GT, causing very high unconjugated bilirubin, causing neonatal kernicterus and death without liver transplant. Okay, coming to the next question. So in Gilbert syndrome, which feature is characteristic? We just read Gilbert. Complete absence? No, we just read it is 30% of the normal activities present.
Ma'am, I am audible.
Bilirubin fluctuates, usually less than 6. This seems likely. Yes. Always symptomatic with pruritus. Again, no, because it is usually asymptomatic. Associated with cirrhosis in adulthood. Again, no, because liver is almost not so badly affected to lend into cirrhosis. Female predominance, again wrong. We just read the male predominance to the tune of 2:7:1. So this is the correct answer. Serum bilirubin fluctuates, usually less than 6 milligram per dl. So Gilbert syndrome, autosomal recessive condition. caused by reduced activity, around 30% of the normal of the UDP-GT is present, leading to impaired conjugation of the bilirubin, but the enzyme activity is not totally absent. So unconjugated bilirubin levels are usually mild, that is less than 6. Levels fluctuate depending upon triggers such as fasting, stress, infection, and exertion. Jaundice is often intermittent and noticed only incidentally, especially in the young adults. It's a benign condition, symptomatic, no progression to CLD, that is chronic liver disease. Liver histology is normal, no fibrosis, no cirrhosis, so no ascites. It is common, seen in almost 3 to 12% prevalence, making it the most frequent hereditary hyperbilirubinemia. So now that makes your another important MCQ. Most frequent hereditary hyperbilirubinemia. Now there is male predominance, as we have just read. Thus, the hallmark feature is fluctuating mild unconjugated hyperbilirubinemia. So I think this is all for today. We have enough questions and we had almost a quick revision of all the topics that we shared, that we studied in our last class. So stay connected. We will be coming. One important announcement, that is, we will be changing dates on your demand. Now we will be from 1st of October, we are starting a new batch. We will be taking live classes every Tuesday and every Thursday, 8 to 9. One class will be a master class. One class will be following its discussion, question-based discussion. Correct? So stay connected with us. Welcome. We will be happy to welcome you all once again every Tuesday, every Thursday, same time. It's a complimentary batch, complimentary session. No fee, no money. Just come, learn, and grow with us. Thank you.